Today, I am joined by Bill O'Reilly to go through some of the biggest stories in the news. Bill, thank you so much for joining me again.
Pleasure, Stephen. How you been?
I've been very well. Good to see you. I know you've been very busy running radio and TV and your show and all the different books. I don't know that you need an introduction, but you're a journalist, news host. You've got the Killing series, super successful. You've got this new book out about confronting evil. I wanted to jump in on an evil story with you to start off. Right before Charlie Kirk was killed, he brought national attention to this young Ukrainian girl who was killed on public transportation by someone who had been arrested and released 14 times. Now, over on X, we have a new situation, a man arrested and released 39 times, 25 felonies. He breaks into this young girl's home where she's vacationing, strips her naked, and then shoots her. How does somebody get away with being arrested 39 times, 25 felonies, and then they're put back on the street? It makes no sense to me.
Well, it's not supposed to make sense, Stephen. I mean, this is an irresponsible society we're living in. And the progressive left does not want to punish criminals. It's insane, but it's true. And it's funny because a year ago, Confronting Evil opened at #1 on the New York Times list on Sunday. And it takes me a year to write these books and research these books. So a year ago at this time, I was saying, I'm seeing evil rise, not only in the United States, but around the world. That's why I put Putin on the cover of the book. And I really should get into it because people are looking away from evil. That was my initial analysis, that the good people not paying attention because of this primarily. They're addicted to the cell phone and they don't want to bother with real life, and it's too complicated and it's too messy. So I'm just going to let this go. So when you see a Charlotte situation where this poor woman lost her life and this mentally ill man, doesn't excuse him, he knew exactly what he was doing, he's out on the street when he shouldn't be, and the X thing that you just talked about, you are dealing with individual evil. Okay? Now that goes down the board. The murderer is obviously evil, but the person who allowed the murderer to continue his violence is evil too. So the book comes out, Confronting Evil comes out September 9th. I wake up September 10th, Stephen, and to find Putin lobbing missiles into Poland, an ultra dangerous situation. And then a few hours later, Charlie Kirk is assassinated. And I'm going, whoa. And then some of the interviewers cited the timing of the book, the release of the book, and they went, it's eerie that this book would come out and then all this stuff would follow. And I said, yeah, it is. It was unsettling to me as the author, but it really brings home the fact that this evil situation, we got to get this under control.
Yeah, I agree with you. The book cover is great. Speaking of Putin, I wanted to get your thoughts. President Trump invites Vladimir Putin to come to Alaska. I feel like he is operating in good faith. You can see from the president's actions and words, he genuinely wants to bring this war to an end. The amount of killing seems to bother him. Then Putin goes home and immediately starts bombing Ukraine. Was the president hoodwinked or tricked, or what do you make of that whole situation?
Well, this is a little complicated answer. Just bear with me. So on 9/11, I went to Yankee Stadium at President Trump's invitation. He was there for the ceremony honoring the families and the victims of the terror attack in 2021. And I knew that there was a reason he was inviting me, not just because of my magnificent personality. And of course, when a president invites you anywhere, you go. So I went and we discussed Putin. And I handed him the book and I said, I know you're very busy, Mr. President, but you got to read the chapter on Putin in Confronting Evil, because he's not the same guy that you dealt with the first time you were in office. He is a different guy now. And that's what always happens, Stephen. If you embrace evil, if evil is what drives you, you get worse. You don't get better. There's no rehab for evil. All right. And that's what's happened to Putin. He is a psychopath. He enjoys killing people, women and children. He targets hospitals. He targets civilians, and he likes it. And so I don't know if President Trump understood the extent of Putin's decline, because Trump had contained him the first 4 years. So now he's dealing with a totally different person. And the president texted me about 24 hours after I gave him the book. He goes, whoa. And I said, yeah. And the president knows that I'm not somebody who just makes stuff up. My analysis in books and on television and radio is all fact-based. I can back up everything I say. And so I think there'll be a different strategy now to deal with Bad Vlad, who is a major threat to this world, perhaps the biggest threat.
Okay. President Trump spoke in front of many generals and colonels earlier this week. He said, we don't want to use the N-word. There's 2 N-words. One of those was obviously nuclear weapons, right? Do you feel like that Russia is holding President Trump and Ukraine and Europe and NATO hostage by saying, basically, we'll use nuclear weapons against you if you do anything to attack us, almost trying to put us in a corner where they'll come out with the big guns if we do anything with the small guns?
Well, that reality's been in play for a long time, but I do believe Putin is capable of using nukes if his back is against the wall. And Trump doesn't want to put him in that kind of a situation where he would be forced to do something drastic. But you got to deal with him. And the strangling of the Russian economy, I think, is the way to do it. And if he does invade any of the NATO nations, then you're going to have to hit him militarily, because you just can't let this go on much longer. Putin is a definite threat to the free world. And once you unleash a guy like that, then you're going to unleash others in North Korea, in China, the jihadists. We're watching this. And it's a matter of containment now. But the nuclear threat, I think, is a very high level with Putin. Not so much the Chinese. The Chinese don't seem to want to do that. And I was in Beijing at the invitation of their government in May. I talked to them extensively. I didn't get that feeling. But Putin, he is a psychopath.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate that insight. The U.S. government has closed down because the 2-party system can't agree on about anything. Republicans blame Democrats. Democrats are blaming Republicans. What are your thoughts on this government shutdown? And was it actually strategic so that they could have talking points to blame each other or hold each other hostage on certain strategies for the country?
It's not an each other equation. The Democratic Party knew, and Schumer, Senator Schumer is the guy who led the pack. They knew that going into a negotiation with Donald Trump and saying that we want health care for illegal immigrants, they knew that was never going to happen. In a million years, that would never happen. So there was no negotiation in good faith. There wasn't anything. Schumer and the Democratic Party wanted the shutdown. And that's the truth. Now, they wanted it because they're desperate. And the Democratic Party has reached a low ebb in modern times. It's losing on every front. And they're trying to create as much chaos as they can within the government so that Americans will shift and start to blame Trump and Republicans for all the bad things that are happening. I don't think that's going to work. Washington Post doesn't think it's going to work, but it might. But this was a last-minute desperation play. That being said, I think the thing will work out. It always seems to. It's a tedious story. I'm tired of hearing pundits who don't know what they're talking about on television go, oh, it's this one, it's that one. What I just told you is absolutely true. Democrats knew what they were proposing was not going to happen, and they did it anyway.
Let me ask you something. How much time do you spend every day on a web browser? How much time do you spend clicking, searching around, scrolling, typing, endless tabs? It's a lot, right? Well, there's a new AI web browser from Perplexity called Comet. And that is completely changing the way that you interact with your web browser. Using Comet feels like having a personal assistant living in your web browser that can actually do things for you across the internet. That's right, it can do things, not just get you answers. You can ask Comet to handle tasks for you, and it literally clicks, types, searches, and scrolls like you would to get things done for you in the background while you go about your day. Comet can shop for you, make reservations, book travel, summarize articles or videos, send emails, schedule meetings, and a lot more to make your life easier. Let me give you an example. I'm about to go on a business trip to Tampa. So I've asked it to find me the best Mexican restaurants in the area. I want them to have a reservation, good reviews, and they have to have Diet Coke. Well, it found the one that I'm planning to go to. It set up the reservation and it's dumped it over to my calendar. You can use Perplexity and Comet to book fun things with your kids or grandkids or buy things and send it to them. It's really quite amazing. Pretty cool, right? Download Perplexity's new AI web browser, Comet, by heading to pplx.ai/Gardner and let your browser work for you. Plus, right now, when you download Comet, you get a month of Rumble Premium for free. That's pplx.ai/Gardner. Go check it out right now. I'll leave a link down below. I got the feeling that this was very strategic on their end. A lot of the polling that was coming out was saying the blame lies with the Democrat Party. The Democrats were trying to say, no, but you have a Republican in the White House. You've got the majority in the Senate. You've got the majority in the House of Representatives. But at the end of the day, this idea of giving money to illegal immigrants, this was a poison pill. They knew that Trump would never swallow that, but they moved forward. But then on the steps of the Capitol, they're saying over and over again, these are lies. Trump is a liar. We don't want money for illegal immigrants. So again, your analysis is this was all premeditated.
Correct. And, you know, politicians are going to mislead voters. They have since 1776. It's not anything that's new. But the Democrats will pull back from that. What they want ultimately is socialized medicine. They want the federal government to run all healthcare and dictate who gets what and how much it costs, like Canada has and Western Europe is. It's what the Democratic Party wants. And by pushing this massive expenditure into Obamacare and extending it to as many people as possible, that's the road to get there. So that's the bigger picture. I don't think the Democrats are going to die on the hill of illegal migrants getting healthcare payments. They won't. They'll draw back from it. But they did want the spectacle, and they got it.
Yeah, they certainly did. What is your take on former FBI Director James Comey being indicted? And do you think we'll see others like John Brennan, James Clapper, or Hillary Clinton be indicted?
It all depends on who's going to testify against those people. So the Comey indictment certainly embarrasses Comey, and he's a bad guy. I wrote a column on BillO'Reilly.com called J. Edgar Comey, because J. Edgar Hoover was the worst. And I write about him in Killing the Mob and Confronting the Presidents. Comey's not that bad, but he's up there. He used the power of the FBI to try to get Hillary Clinton elected in 2016. And there's no doubt about that. That is a fact. But that's not illegal. Unless he did break the law in some way. And in order to prove that in a court of law, federal court, the government, the Justice Department, is going to have to bring in witnesses that accuse Comey of that and say, look, I heard him. I saw him. He did it. And I don't know whether the government has those witnesses or not.
Okay. Well, time will tell. So I want to go back to Charlie Kirk. I opened with his name. after his passing, there's all this talk about, was he for Israel? Was he against Israel? Is the war in Gaza justifiable? He openly admitted that he was getting tired of talking about Israel and wanted to talk more about America. Israel seems to have lost a lot of support for people under the age of 40. But now you've got President Trump trying to lay out this 21-point plan on how to make Gaza great again. And part of that is bringing in other Middle Eastern countries, rebuilding these big, beautiful cities like President Trump toured in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Do you think that will actually happen? Or are we going to see Hamas hold on to hostages and Israel lay waste to Gaza?
I think the latter is probably more likely. So I'm hoping, but hope isn't a strategy, that Hamas says, yeah, we're going to release the hostages and try to negotiate in good faith to rebuild Gaza. But then you got to look at it from their point of view. They lose all power. Hamas loses all power. They lose all the money, and that's big, that Iran is sending them. And they scatter to the wind, still to be hunted down. I mean, once a terrorist, always a terrorist. I opened my book, Confronting Evil, with the October 7th attack in Israel. I wanted to put the reader of my book right in the middle of that so that they understand vividly what evil is. So these Hamas people are evil. And they now are kind of desperate. And Netanyahu will kill as many of them as possible. And in the process, innocent people will die because Hamas hides behind them. All of that is likely to happen if Hamas does not agree to the ceasefire and the terms. And I would say at this point in history, it's likely Hamas will not agree. Terrorists are terrorists. That's what they do. They don't just retire. So I hope I'm wrong, because you could rebuild Gaza. You could make it into a tourist and a beautiful location right on the Mediterranean. I've been there. Okay, you can get a lot of investment money in, give those people some work, some hope, rebuild it. It's all possible, but not when terrorists are running the show.
Yeah. Do you think that this was all premeditated, that they knew in the end that they would lose, but in the battle for getting those hostages back, that they could try to embarrass Israel on the public stage?
Well, you don't lose if you continue your terrorist activities. I don't care about the Palestinian people. I think Hamas cares about the Palestinians. They don't care. And, they don't lose unless they're killed. That's when they lose, they're dead, because they'll just go someplace else and do horrible, heinous things. That's what terrorists do. That's why you have to wipe them out. And so they're not looking at we might lose the fight, or they don't lose unless they're killed. And again, if they agree to this, which would surprise me, then where do they go? What do they do? Maybe they could go to Iran. I don't know. But it just doesn't seem logical. You had to kill ISIS. Trump and Obama did that. You wiped them out. Al-Qaeda, you wiped out Osama bin Laden. That seems to be the only way to deal with these people.
I want to talk about Confronting Evil. I went through it. I found the Joseph Stalin and the Henry VIII to be very interesting chapters. As you researched this and put this together over the last year, were there any individuals that you learned new things about that you were like, wow, that was some really evil stuff?
All of them. I mean,
every
all
one
of them.
All
15 of them. There's 4 on the cover, but the rest are inside the pages. Stalin was a methodical killer, pretty much the same as Hitler. Didn't have a lot of difference between them. And Putin's idol is Stalin. Mao Zedong, worst mass murderer on earth. Planet's never seen a worse man than him. He starved his own people, 20 million. And he was a coward himself, lived in the hills, didn't fight Chiang Kai-shek himself. So every chapter, Henry VIII, the reason I have him in there is because not only was he personally evil, executing his wife, his wives, and his best friends, but he started these wars, these religious wars. And to this day, the Irish are fighting a religious war. They've never stopped. And that's all from Henry VIII. See, I wanted to make every chapter pertinent to today. Everybody we write about has a link to how we live today. And in doing so, I had to select the people who did horrible, horrible things, but like not Saddam Hussein or Pol Pot, because they don't really come out of their own little environments. The ones that we did, the slave traders, the drug barons, all of these, they influence everybody.
You were wildly successful with your killing series. I believe over 20 books. Is this Confronting? Is this a new set of series, or is this a one-time?
No, Confronting the Presidents was our first one, and this is the second. Both hit #1. I've had 20 #1 bestsellers, nonfiction, on the New York Times list, which is a world's record. We are the best-selling nonfiction authors in the world. Never be beaten, because people don't read as much as they used to. So very proud, but it is a new series. It gives me a little bit wider scope to write about all the presidents, all the evildoers, whereas the killing series is zeroed in on an individual, Kennedy, Lincoln, Reagan, whatever it may be, or a war, World War II, the Indian Wars, that kind of thing. The Confronting gives us more latitude to go into areas that I think people will be interested in.
Okay. I'm going to put a direct link so that people can find that down below. Let me get you out on this question. Do you still think that President Trump is doing a good job, that he is fulfilling campaign promises? And is there any area where you worry he might be leaving the path for what MAGA expected from him?
He's been pretty loyal to his promises. I think the president's got a problem with the economy, and he's got to really pay serious attention to that in the next 12 months, or he'll lose the midterms. And if he doesn't take both houses, the Republicans don't hold both houses, it's going to be pretty rough the last 2 years for Donald Trump. So the economy is everything as far as the voters here in America are concerned. But I think he's been pretty loyal to what he promised his constituents. 77 million of them voted for him, what he was going to do. I wish he would show a little more restraint sometimes. Jimmy Kimmel's not important. And you can slap them, whack them, but don't spend a lot of time on that kind of stuff. And I would explain, in more detail why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think that would help him. But it's all about the economy, Stephen, for the next 12 months. It's got to get back on track. Prices have got to come down.
Okay. I appreciate your insight and all that you do. I'm going to put direct links to your show, your website, and your book so people can pick it up easily. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Same with you, Stephen. I appreciate the conversation.